Do you believe I can transmit mentally the identity of this playing card from my mind to yours? Or do you think it might be possible for you to travel mentally through space and peer over my shoulder and be able to see the identity of this card? And if you could, so what? Why would you use such incredible mental powers to identify playing cards when you could probably discover much more impactful secrets? I mean, think about it. Let's say that you could develop psychic powers, remote viewing, as a person who can't afford, for whatever reason, to go to the rare book libraries that are filled with the information that would make you the most professional individual in your small little village, where you could innovate left, right, and center and secure an absolute fortune. And yet, there are lots of people who believe in remote viewing just in ways that can't be verified by scientists. And this is just one of the questions that plagues the world of people who claim to have psychic power, supernatural abilities, and in some cases, even superior memory. Nelson Dellis, a friend for many years, a renowned memory athlete, an accomplished author, an amazing YouTuber, and professor, and of course, all-around amazing guy, has been exploring these ideas, supernatural claims about remote viewing, and also going to see people who make claims about being able to memorize entire books. And some of the answers to the questions that Nelson and I raise in the following discussion aren't as straightforward as they seem. Or are they? Join me now as Nelson and I discuss the possible fraud of a potentially very talented memory man, and Nelson's experiences with remote viewing, how it maybe relates to getting the upper hand in some sports betting, and then we discuss the nature of reality itself, as if all these other topics weren't heady enough. If you're new here, get subscribed, and as always, for the love of memory, hit that thumbs up so that the robots never forget how much we humans love our memory techniques, including the history of memory techniques and the outer limits of what might be possible the more we experiment with them. And if you feel like I have projected this card to your mind, go ahead, type your guess in the chat before you get to the experiment that I run with Nelson. And I'd love to know your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions, your responses. Do you think that I successfully projected it to him? Or was it just a trick? Nelson, long time no see. And just to dive right into it, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I have this feeling since the last time we talked, you've been doing a fair amount of focus on almost like Harry Houdini-esque debunking of paranormal claims of extraordinary, highly superior memory, remote viewing, like these kinds of things. What's the origin story of this interest, and, what's it all about?
Yeah, I mean, first with the debunking stuff, I mean, I've never been one to kind of prod into the paranormal stuff, but I was trying to debunk memory things. Some of my better performing YouTube videos were about what I thought about a performance or a demonstration, usually online, where you can record something and there's potentially no context about how it was set up and what is, between cuts, if there are any, and things like that. So, the big one was, this is a few years ago, or maybe it's kind of quieted down, but it was a big jumping point. Fortunately, that's the way of the internet. It was a big jumping point for my channel with this Nepalese memory king, self-proclaimed memory king, BJ Shahi. I have some connection to Nepal. I've been there numerous times to climb. I have a love for the country, and I love the Nepalese people, the Sherpa community. So I felt like a connection, when I don't even know how I found this, but I'm often looking for, memory demonstrations, memory records, just videos. I'm just curious. Like, I love watching that stuff and seeing what the lay of the land is, if there's anything new or any new people or people I know trying new things, right? And I saw this memory king, this demonstration of a guy. None of it was in English, but he was memorizing, I think it was like 150 words in 60 seconds, right? And they were English words, but he wasn't speaking English. very well. And the whole video was in Nepalese except for the words that he was supposedly reciting. And, you know, I'm looking at this thing and it's just wild. Like he's writing all these things and it's one take, but I don't know the language and it's impossible. From what I know, I've trained words and I tried to do like in 5 minutes as much as I can. I kind of know what the records are. It's like, you can't do 150 in 60 seconds. I'm sorry. The best in the world can't do that. That doesn't mean that it's not possible, right?
Right.
But I feel like I have a good sense of what is possible. And so I think I shared it with like Simon Reinhardt and Johannes. I'm like, what do you think of this? This is impossible because they're really good at words, better than I am. And they're like, yeah, this can't be real. So as I let that sit, it was a very grainy video. I didn't have much weight. I didn't even think it had many views. And then this must have been like half a year later, this famous video, now famous, of BJ doing like a textbook this big. He's outdoors at a table, just like whirring through the pages, chanting gibberish to the skies, barely looking at each page. And then it's like an hour-long video. And later on, he writes out a page supposedly at random. And the presenter says, hey, this page, go and do it. He does it kind of off screen, of course, and comes back. And it's a perfect replica of the page, one of the pages of this textbook, mind you, in English, which he doesn't speak. And, the whole thing was like, he can't even, he's not even looking at these pages, right?
Yeah.
And the words he's saying are just like, looks like someone speaking in tongues, it just looks ridiculous, right? Anyways, that just looked silly. I made a reaction video to it because it looked preposterous and I was just saying it's impossible. I think a year later, I go to Nepal to climb and I get messages from BJ direct from him. And he's like, are you in Nepal? I would love for you to interview me, meet me so I can demonstrate. And I was like, oh man, this would be great content. Not expecting, or expecting to just see that this is complete bullshit with my own eyes, right? So we meet. It was during COVID time, so there was some weird, like I had to have a government official take me across town, and it was like in his office. Unfortunately, I wanted him to come to my hotel, and he said he couldn't do that. I think he could have, but I think he wanted me to be there to control the situation. And I feel like I'm a good skeptic, but man, when you're like in the thick of it, sometimes like you just can't see past what you think you're ready for, Yeah. And I left that whole thing. You watched the whole hour-long plus video. I have it uncut. You can watch it. And I left that honestly thinking there might be something to this guy because he did it. I brought a random book in English, one that was just published, so there's no way that he could have had a copy of it or access to it in the background somehow. And I chose a random page, and he did his whole thing. Was it perfect? No, but it was still way more impressive than anything I could do in that amount of time. There were some little things that were fishy, but I couldn't wrap my head around what he could have possibly done. But anyway, so I posted that video and I left it open. I was like, I don't know. A bit weird. I still don't fully buy it, but I don't know how he would have done it. And then a bunch of people put comments. They're like, oh, well, what about this, and that? And then I started to like open up and be like, yeah, you know what? Let me look at this again. Let me think about it. And I made another video basically pointing out the things that were very fishy, if not damning of this attempt. And then I found one clue in the actual video that to me was the nail in the coffin. And, it was a paper that he had written on. The one I gave him had a different margin than the one that he gave back to me later. So there must have been some switching involved. And so I don't know fully how he did it, but that thing alone, like, it's not the same paper that I gave him. So whatever happened in between, it doesn't matter,
Well, that would be like one of my first guesses, but the way I would do it, right, is I would have a wall cut out, and I would say, actually, I read that book yesterday with remote traveling. And then I would reach, and while you're not paying attention, someone on the other side of the wall would have taken one of my memory journals, like maybe the John Lee Dumas Freedom Journal up here, and would have replaced it while you're not looking. And then not only would I have recited to you every single word that you asked for, like the first word on every page of the book, but it would have been written 2 days ago, like in my journal, because someone on the other side of the wall is listening to you, like, or me read it out loud in order to create the impression, that sort of thing.
And I think that's basically, I think what's happened. There was a secretary assistant was on the other side.
These are well-known tricks.
Yeah. And I think because there was one moment when I was filming him do the chanting and he was like, no cameras, you have to turn around for a split second. And I kind of kept him in my peripheral, but he was at the door. There was one door and he was like up against it. And so for sure she slid the paper under, and she had been listening because he read the line, the page out loud, because that's part of his process. I should have known. And yeah. And it's funny because if you look, the translation, like what was written is like, obviously he doesn't speak English, so some of the words he read out loud didn't come across right, but it was written that way, so it was written as if somebody was listening to the gibberish version of the English that he was saying. I think now it's interesting. I was just in Nepal, and I think the latest thing that BJ is doing is he can bring people back from the dead.
Oh,
that's his new thing. I guess he's moved on from being a memory king. He's now just God, straight up.
I have a feeling sometimes I can bring people back from the dead too. I mean, quotations are
yeah, exactly. Yeah, some form of it, right? So there was that was the kind of the big thing, and then I've done a couple of videos, reactions, kind of saying like what I thought about this and that. Another big one was another mentalist. I don't really want to name his name, just don't want to go there. But and this happens a lot. I feel that I've seen magicians claim that they're memorizing something, and they're not. But and that's fine. It's just how you present that and where, right? So, if you're like a show and you're a mentalist and you say I'm a mentalist, the lines are blurred. So people go in there kind of, they want to believe it, but you have good memory, fine. But maybe they think you're doing magic, right? But this particular mentalist is involved in the memory world and kind of in cahoots with real memory athletes. So I feel like that's crossing a line because now you're confusing, what we're actually doing with what you're pretending to do. And that's not fair because it now makes us look inferior, but you're not actually doing the memory thing. So there's I did an analysis on his card memorization tricks, and it was all phony. Yeah, that has some details to it that I don't want to touch on because it can get sensitive with some people that I know. But
yeah, it's a tricky thing. Go ahead.
Because I was going to say, because there are some other, I keep a document of videos that I've seen that I want to do a reaction to, but now I'm hesitant because I'm not fully hesitant. I feel like I will eventually do it because part of me doesn't care. I prefer to out these people than keep it in, but it's the internet. Like after I did the BJ video, immediately, the second one, the one that was more damning to him, I started getting texts from people in Nepal saying R.I.P. BJ. I thought oh yeah, my video, silenced him, but they were like, no, he killed himself. And they were sending me pictures of something he had posted of him. It looked like he was in a coffin kind of thing. And I was like, and my heart stopped and I was about to take my video down and I was like, I can't do stuff like this. But 15 minutes later, there was a picture of him walking around his house and he had faked it. But man, that scared the shit out of me because it's I don't want to hurt people, but at the same time, it's not fair to let people just post whatever they want maliciously. As it's malicious, right? When you're selling something and pretending something so extravagant, that I don't buy. And if I have a place to maybe put an end to something like that, like I'm gonna say something, you know.
Yeah.
So,
No, I think that's good work. And there are people who play it straight. I mean, I was super honored just before Christmas. Sal Piacente came to Brisbane. He said,
nice.
we want to get together, and we hung out. And he does real deal memorization right in front of your face. And
I love Sal. He's awesome.
yeah, you met him. Yeah, so you've seen this sort of thing, and he'll do full deck memorization or partial deck memorization, or even this kind of thing where it's just, instead of saying like King of Hearts, it'll be just like King 10 7 5 Queen or whatever,
Okay.
right? But that's still, even though he's in that particular demonstration, and he's basically just using the major to memorize just identities, like the words for the numbers, that sort of thing. It's still legit, and he's quite careful in saying, look, I knew Kim Peek. This is what you would do in order to be something like that. Or, Kim didn't use those things, but, this is what I've worked out and so forth. And it just like plays it straight, legit. And he's, gambling expert and helps casinos keep things.
And knows how people cheat with cards too.
Yeah. So that's why I mentioned the Houdini thing at the beginning, because, Houdini not only was deeply personally alarmed and hurt by this, because he had been basically, I don't know the whole story, but he was like duped, or he was in a situation where he really wanted to have contact with his mother. And so that put him on the warpath, so to speak, to like try to quote unquote debunk these people. So I just wonder, do you have an awareness of why you're interested in, the real deal?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was just thinking of kind of my whole life journey. I was actually pretty, well, growing up, we didn't really go to church or have religion in our family. My father, I think, was a Christian. He cried when the Pope died years ago. It's like, I forget, I don't even know the Pope's name, but whatever one died, like in the early 2000s, that one.
Right.
And then my mother was atheist, or is, and so was my sister, my brother probably too. I don't know. So I think around 7 or 8, I remember being in my bed and just, I'd be like, "Oh, God, please, get me a Game Boy for Christmas," or "God, make this happen," blah blah blah, and it wouldn't happen, and it's still stupid. Like I'm just, as a kid, like I felt kind of silly, and I was like, I don't even believe this. Like I don't need to do this. And so from that day, I didn't believe in God, and I haven't, and even through my teens and college years, I became a very strong atheist. I like read books about it and would fight people about it. And then I kind of stopped like caring too much about that. I hated having those conversations because you can never win, or convince anybody, in my opinion. So I feel like over the years I've just kind of become agnostic. Like I believe in myself, and that's I have faith in myself, and that's enough, right? But I do believe, or did believe, that I die, get in the ground, and I'm dead, right? I grew up studying physics. That was my major. I always wanted to find the way the world works through math and logic and sound reasoning. So I think that's a big part of why I want to get to the truth of things. And I don't like it when people, people can believe whatever. I totally want to respect anybody's belief system. But when you're trying to convince others, it feels like with bad intentions. I don't like that. And so I feel like trying to debunk or expose the truth so that people have the truth and then they can do what they want with it, or at least more information, the true information. I feel like that's the fair thing for people to have. And again, coming from my expertise, if I can share something there, then I will. In other circles, I may not have anything to add to it, so I'm not going to jump in. But this felt right,
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great history to know, and I think I'm very much right with you there. I mean, I was militant with my atheism, and ultimately it was making me ill, and so I sort of changed it to being a non-astrologist. And
I like that, man. I have never heard that before.
I heard that on NPR years ago from Sam Harris, where he was
Oh, cool.
talking about
Okay.
like, why would you call yourself an atheist anyway? Because like you don't believe in astrology, you're gonna call yourself a non-astrologist. Like there's something kind of there's not. It's a good useful term, but it's also a little bit illogical in a way because you can't. It's not about proving one thing or the other. It's just I'm not convinced by the evidence. But I saw something just maybe 2 days ago from George Carlin, and he was saying, he's a person of deep political conviction and so forth. But he said that he never really thought that he got really funny until that he was willing to let go of the outcome, because trying to convince the audience one way or the other was just like somehow this barrier. And then once he just decided to not care, I think, as he put it, then he was able to just go say what he thinks, make the audience uncomfortable, and then the laughter ensued, which I thought was very interesting. That kind of common theme of just letting go of the outcome and even the terminology, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love George Carlin.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
It's classic stuff. Yeah. But then, so
but wait,
to continue with my story, there was, this was 2021, early 2021. There was a post on, and it comes back to memory. So there was a post on one of the World Memory Championship Facebook websites. I'm trying to think exactly how it was, but roughly it was like a 2-sentence blurb from someone outside of the group saying, listen, there's a paid opportunity, part-time. Anybody interested? Send a message, right? And so I just happened to catch that. I don't really look at that Facebook page much at the time or now. But usually when there's like a memory-related financial opportunity, I'm always curious what it is. Like, there's only so many, besides speaking gigs and, brand ambassadorship, whatever. I don't know what else this could be. So I'm always kind of interested. So I sent a message. I maybe was one of the first because they wrote back to me and said, yeah, you and some other person we're getting in touch with. We'll give you a call soon. And so maybe that same day or the next day I got a call, and it changed my world. You could say this call did, because the first thing the guy asked me is, do you know what remote viewing is? And I said, I have never heard of that, honestly. And I don't know, is that like when you watch TV, like streaming on an app or something? It's, I don't know, remotely. And he's like, no. It's, have you ever heard of Project Stargate or the CIA, using psychics and stuff like that? And I was like, I think maybe I'd heard about that, but I can't tell you. I was on the phone in the kitchen. I can remember where it was, and my eyes must have rolled so far back in my head. I was just like, oh God, what did I just get myself into? This is either just some complete crazy bullshit, or it's like they're going to be asking me for money in about 5 minutes and some like scam, But anyways, I got along with the guy on the phone. He's super interesting, and he was super interested in my memory stuff too. He actually wanted me to coach him as a side thing. And he basically said that some financial firm that he was partnered with was looking for 2 memory athletes to partner in a project where they were going to teach them how to remote view, pay us, right? So we would get paid. And then once we're trained, we would then be using this tool, this protocol to predict things in the market, and whatever we make as a team, we would get a portion of that. So I thought to myself, this is complete horseshit, but at the very least, I will A, have a story, and B, maybe, unless it's still a scam, my wife thought it was a scam, I'll make some money, But I was more interested in the story, right? And someone to teach me something that I would love to see how they teach me, so I can just debunk it, or find ways, maybe even make a YouTube video out of it, right?
Yeah.
So I did it for a month every day. I was trained for about an hour. I had some homework that I had to work on in between. And man, the first week or two, I was just like, this is so ridiculous. Like, what am I doing? The guy on the other end of the screen was just like, felt so cheesy and just so like against everything that I believe in. And I thought everything he was doing was just to try, like he was a charlatan. That's the whole time. But during those 2 weeks, and maybe around the 2-week mark, it heightened, I would get some really interesting results. And I'd be like, how can I explain this? Like, and it reminded me of,
What is an interesting result?
okay, so what we were doing essentially, for those who don't know, is we would be given a target number, so some random number. Honestly, it has nothing to do with what I end up perceiving or whatever. Truly random, and we can talk about why this is given, anyways, if it truly is, psychic stuff. But basically, I have to come up with and describe and sketch. And there's different stages. And so at the beginning, I wasn't doing very deep, detailed things, but that changed over time. A random photograph that he has selected, or some random program he was using selected. And then we judge it, right? And the idea is that a trained remote viewer can get those right often, and really good ones can extract a lot of detail. And again, this is without any knowledge, completely blind to this target, the thing that I'm trying to perceive. And it could be anything, right? Some of the photos of going back, what we analyzed after the session was, Stonehenge, or a random mountain range, or a sheep in a field, or some random carpet pattern. It's like, these are truly random photos. And so some would be way off. Like, at the end, I always grade it, like, out of 10, how close was this? And sometimes I'd be like, this is a fucking 0, man. This is like, nothing to do. Like, no way. I can't even convince myself anything of this is good. I was very hard on myself. But then other ones, I'd be like, they'd be really good, and I'd still give it like a 3. I'd be like, no, some of it was in line, but then stuff would not be. And I'd be like, I could write enough words down or draw random scribbles and convince myself that it's somewhat related to this random photo, But then some would be like too close, right? And I remember one was like, if you can imagine like a roller coaster, the corkscrew part of a roller coaster that does that. It was like a photo like aimed inside this part of the roller coaster. It was green, and you could see the trolley, the cart with people in it was like in the foreground, coming out of the photo in a way. And I drew this spiral with a box, and wrote words like life form, speed, spinning, attraction, kind of things like that. And I'm sure I wrote some other things that weren't in line. I don't remember. I have the session somewhere written down, but of all the things I could have written, right? Of all the photos that could have been shown, that's what I wrote, and that's what I drew. So I paused at that, and I'm like, what are the odds, right? Like, and so the thoughts start creeping, right? There was one specific session, and you can see this in a video I did with Chris Ramsey, where I drew a whale breaching. And again, you can look at it and think what you want to think. Is it close? Is it not? I think it's very close. I gave it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. But that photo, like, my hair stood on end when I saw the actual photo after, because I was like, I don't know how to explain this, Could he have fed me information and he knew the photo beforehand? Sure, right? We did this over Zoom. I always left that possibility open. But otherwise, I don't know. And even still, I don't know how he could have done that. I have that whole session recorded, and I've watched it over and over again, and I don't see anything, that could have fed me any information subtly. But again, I missed the DJ Shahi thing, right? So, but anyways, that was the start of it. That kind of started to pique my interest, and I started reading books about it, started doing stuff with it on my own, having more of those experiences on my own as I got better at it. And that kind of opened the door to this world of paranormal, which previously I've been entirely shut off. And it was scary to me. It's still scary to me because it goes against everything as a younger person I didn't believe in, right? So you open the door to something like this. What else do you open the door to? You kind of have to be open to anything, right? Because if this works, if this is true, maybe not anything, but what does it mean, right? Like that I can see the future, right? That information is everywhere, right? And if I can do that, then can I reach into the past? What is time? Like, am I time traveling? Like, what is happening in the mind? What is memory, right? Is memory this too, right? Like, I don't know. So that's in 2021 kind of blew my world open, and it's kind of been falling down the rabbit hole since then. And I don't really tell many people about this. I'm telling more people about it. It's funny that you had John Graham on recently, because we kind of discovered that we are both exploring this about a year ago. We both kind of shared it somehow. We're like, wait, you're into this weird stuff too? And then we just like got into it, which was really funny. Yeah. Sorry for rambling.
No, not at all. I mean, I think and John knows, and everybody knows. I mean, I have wild experiences in my meditations, and as I said to John, I mean, I just have this particular cosmic stop sign, which is a Jeffrey Klempner term, which is he uses it in his philosophy of metaphysics, and I'm deep into philosophy, especially what's called pure immanence, which is much more complicated than this, but nonetheless, if you boil it down to one sentence, pure immanence is not transcendence. Transcendence is the idea that there's separation. So like something created reality. Pure immanence is that reality created itself out of itself. And so like, how could there ever be a beginning to a thing? Because that would mean there was a second, right? But there is no second. Yeah. It's just purely immanent out of itself, as opposed to creator created, all that sort of stuff. And
just is.
Yeah. Right? Except for everything that you could ever use to explain the isness, right? Or the what the is, right? Yeah. Would come out of the thing we're trying to describe.
Okay. Right? Got it. Yeah.
So when we do these kinds of experiments, and then we go, well, now, I had this experience, so what does it all mean, and all that sort of stuff, really just makes me actually ask you, would you be interested in doing an experiment?
Right now?
Yeah. Remote viewing. Sure. It'll be remote viewing, but I'm also going to push you, or I'm going to try to project. All right? Mm-hmm. And it may give some insight into how sometimes these things work. So I'm not going to let this leave the screen, or I'm going to try not to. It's my Santa sleigh ride. It's a normal deck of cards, except for the fact that the Joker is a reindeer.
Reindeer. Okay.
Now, this is an experiment. It's not a magic trick, okay? Now, I cannot project faces, okay? So hopefully nothing has left the screen. This card won't leave the screen. I can't project face cards. I struggle with aces. But anything else, I'm going to project to you a certain card. And I just want you to try to tell me, what is this card in my hand? Whenever you're ready.
Okay. 6 of diamonds.
6 of diamonds. Is that your first choice?
Yeah.
Close. You're pretty good, but...
Oh, shit. Okay.
That's the 7 of diamonds.
Yeah.
So what does your analytical mind do there? As opposed to, wow, that was almost right.
Yeah,
because either I failed or you failed, right? if it was anything other than what I had in mind as an experiment.
Yeah, I definitely saw red. I mean, and this is hindsight. So now I'm like, oh yeah, I saw red. Yeah, it's 50-50, right, for that. Mm-hmm. But it's not 50-50 for the suit. But anyways, I actually, I thought of, it's funny, I thought of a 7 first but then I thought I was a magician.
Well, but I asked you, did you think of something first? And you said no.
I didn't count that because that felt like that.
You don't follow the rules.
That felt like my analytical. I convinced myself that was my analytical mind. So when I actually did the choice, what I actually mentally did is I looked up into kind of like a mental blackboard, and just had a flash, right? And that's what I saw. It was a 6 of diamonds. So
that was your stronger choice.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, so when I do this remote stuff, there is a protocol that takes longer. Um, that being said, coming up with alphanumerics is quite difficult in this thing, because you're trying to name something, and whenever you have to name something, it's quite difficult, rather than describe something, which just kind of sounds like a cop out a little bit to me sometimes, but I understand it as well. But anyways, so doing this more like flashing of an intuitive guessing, I feel like I don't think I'm very good at, but that's pretty good. I feel like that's close, but you may argue that it's wrong. So
it's not about right or wrong, but the reason why I thought about it, not only because a reindeer joker is amazing, and I wanted to show that off.
That's pretty cool.
But
where did you get that deck, by the way? I collect decks too, as you probably do. I would love Christmas one.
Well, interestingly enough, I won't get into the whole story, but I got some stuff from Penguin Magic, and they just sent it to me as like a gift. And that was really great, because I do a lot of memory research, and I get a lot of stuff that is related to mem deck work and whatever. They sent it, and cool. It's not a gimmick deck. It's just a normal deck that has like the Ace of Diamonds has a present in the center.
Oh, nice. I just got for Christmas a Lord of the Rings themed one, and
sweet.
All the Jokers. Well, the Jokers are just this hodgepodge of things, but every suit is kind of like themed with like the House of Gondor. The Rohan. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan.
I actually just reread The Hobbit, and I read the introductory material of the Lord of the Rings, and I'm going on a big tour of that. So yeah, and I sort of just plucked through some of the movies just to revive, some stuff. And one of the reasons why is because one of my longtime people who's been in my world of memory stuff in magnetic memory method, Ivar, he has been doing some recordings with me about medical mnemonics, because he passed his basic nursing exam using memory techniques as a great assistant, and now he's getting his degree in becoming a anesthetist nurse. So the nurse that helps the anesthesiologist, or however you say this, anesthetist.
Something like that,
yeah. Anesthesiology, anyway. So every time that we're talking about, like, not every time, but when we're talking about mnemonics, he always has these Lord of the Rings characters, and I was just like, I read this a long time ago, watched the movies, I never memorized any of the names, but I'm just like, wow, these are great how they snap on to a lot of these medical terms. So that's why I started.
I can see that. Yeah, I think I saw a funny, like a quiz online of, is this the name of a drug or Lord of the Rings character?
Oh, really?
I'm a pretty good. Like, I know a lot of the Lord of the Rings lore, but I couldn't in some cases distinguish the two. Yeah.
Anyway, why I thought of that, since that trick, because it is a trick with the cards, is because, and I said,
wait, it was a trick? It was a trick?
Well, it's not a trick card. It's a normal card. The reason why I thought of it, though, is it relates to the circle and the square and the words that you wrote on there. Maybe. I'm not saying that it does totally, but I told you I'll push you a little bit. I'll force you. And I did. I said, I can't project faces. So that already eliminates a large amount of the deck. Then I said, I can't really do aces. And sometimes I'll say, most people choose an ace anyway, so don't choose that, right? Now, that's already eliminated most of the deck. When you said 6 of diamonds, I just thought, beautiful, right? Like, not what I wanted, but close enough to create an effect. Yeah. And I really could milk it, right? But I asked you, was that your first choice? And it turns out it wasn't, but you said yes, that it was. And in any case,
first choice.
I don't know what the numbers are, but when I used to perform magic, all the time, I had a page always in my notebook, and I would end that trick by having a little, like a written spreadsheet. And I would say, there's another one, tick, right? And I had 2 of diamond, 3 of diamond, 4 of diamond, 5 of diamond. Stats on it. It's almost always 7 of diamonds. But the time that it isn't, when I say, are you sure that was the first card that came to your mind? They'll go, no, it was the 7 of diamonds. Now, if I really want to go for gold, I will then create a story, and I'll say, you know why that you landed on that number? It's because I just mentioned to you the number 7 about 5 minutes ago, and when I did, I went like this with my hands. right? Which is totally
Did
BS.
you though? Did you
No,
do that?
no, but I say that, right? And you know, it's just magic. So, and I tell people I don't have any psychic powers. It's not a psychic thing. It's a routine in persuasion, and we arrive at this card. But the point is you might not know what has been said there, and I'll watch the video if I can find it and see what I might see. But at the end of the day, the idea that one draws a circle and a square inside of a circle or all that sort of stuff, if we think about this philosophy of pure immanence versus transcendence,
mm-hmm.
What other shapes are there? Like, are you going to draw a dodecagram or something like this, or ecosahedron? Like, it's very likely to draw those things. But the mind takes so many shortcuts, and the shortcuts that it takes leads. And you know math better than I do, which reminds me of something I've never asked you before, which I want to ask you about. But the mind takes so many shortcuts to the easiest possible things that I think in chance, 7 out of 10 is well within the realm of being within chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even if you had 7 guesses of geometrical shapes in a row, I don't think that would escape chance, especially since we tend to go for simple shapes, simple words, etc. So I don't know what your response would be, but that's part of what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And I totally agree. I have something to say on that in just a moment. But to be fair, the hits that I had were more than just simple shapes.
Okay.
You know, there's more to them than that. So, I get what you're saying, and I still, you know, I'm not, I'd say I'm like, I used to be, when I was going through that, I was maybe like, I became like 60% convinced. Now I'm way more convinced because I've had way more experiences like this and just stacked on each other. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I still want to leave space because I don't want to, I don't claim that there is no other explanation. Mm-hmm. I want to leave room for that because there could very well be. Yeah.
Oh, look, I don't discount the idea that there may be something going on, but what I wonder always is, and I think I asked this of John as well, is, and look, maybe it's a hard-nosed answer, or it's a hard-nosed question, but it was what I got in grad school when I did my PhD. So what? I mean, if it's true, so what? What is the thing that we're now going to do? Like, are we going to win the lottery 50,000 times in a row so that we can cure cancer once and for all? Like, what's the big payoff of it all? You know, that's the hard question.
It's funny because that was one of my questions. Is like, okay, so this works. Immediately, the question is like, where are all the billionaires, right? Like, where are the remote viewer billionaires, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you don't hear about them because they go into hiding and nobody want to share this with anybody. But I don't believe that. Right. You know, this would be, more people would be doing this if the financial gain was there, right?
Did you make money in the market, by the way, by viewing numbers?
Not enough for me to quit anything. I've made a little bit because I've done this also with like sports betting, and I'm up, but I wouldn't, you know, I would, and maybe I need to be more. I'm making a YouTube video about it that I've been working on over the year to track my results, but maybe I should be doing it more frequently. I don't know, but I am up, but again, it's not like I have like a small edge, it seems, but not enough, I guess, with the stakes that I'm using to see any big gain, you know?
Yeah.
And I have this whole book on associative remote viewing, which is really the application of remote viewing to make money off of gaming, stocks, things like that. And there's countless accounts of people trying different projects with different, you know, what do you call it? Bankrolls and things like that. And nobody's really winning. You know, like there's a story about like, was it Hal Puthoff who bet on silver futures and got them right like 12 times in a row, made $150,000. Okay. But that's kind of like I'm sure it's true. I would guess it's true, but I haven't really heard anything else big from other people. So why not? And the explanation that I get and what I see is that it's hard. It's hard to predict numbers. Like if you're going to guess the lottery numbers, or I do this thing every week with a group where we predict or we guess. Um, Someone who organizes the group chooses a horse race somewhere in the world, and we try as a team to predict the winner. And I keep my own stats, and I think my stats are very interesting. I think they are beyond chance, better than chance, but only slightly. And I don't put money on it, but maybe I should. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
interesting, but I don't know. These are the kinds of things that like make me step back a second, because it's like, what are we doing with this? Like, it doesn't really do much, it seems. It's just like a small effect, if anything, right? But then I think like, well, if we're talking about like human expansion and how we're going to evolve, right? Maybe this is like very early learning stages of something that our minds can do, that, if there are aliens and more advanced civilizations out there, that they have spent millions of years and can do this much better than we can, right? And this is like the baby steps of our brains like breaking into it, So tiny effect. We all can do it. Some of us better than others. Not super accurate, but it just is a thing that, as a race, as a species, whatever, we it's naturally going to start playing around with and eventually get better at it, and that's just part of the evolution. I don't know. Maybe that's what it's for,
Yeah. Well, I
a
think
stepping stone.
I think prima
Our
facie,
brain.
we just have collective effects, and we have 80-20 distributions, if not exactly 80-20, where when we get together as a species and we really focus on a thing, we can get rockets into space. We can build an internet, like all that sort of stuff. So framing effects, maybe what you would call the placebo of intelligence, like all that stuff, I think is absolutely a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this maybe bridges into what I was mentioning that I've never asked you before, but I don't know why, or I don't have any memory of asking you about it before. Maybe I have, but it maybe bridges into it. Like, if I understand correctly, you have a very strong computer background, computer science, and I mean that's sort of where I go, but at the end of where I go. But I think you wrote, on a particular maybe mathematical component of this or so forth. So I just wonder, to what extent you have already an advantage in mathematical thinking, and just more about what your actual background is and all that, because I've never asked you. It's just as far as I can remember.
Yeah. My background, I studied math and physics in university. I've always loved math. That interest peaked in my early college years. I was okay at it in my later years in high school, but again, I wanted to study something that would explain logically how the world works. So math, physics, that was my God, I wanted to be able to explain anything with the laws of physics, right?
Right.
So I was good at that, and got my undergrad in physics, and then went on to grad school in physics, but then I switched to computer science. I wanted to do something a little more techy. So I got my master's in computer science, and now I teach computer science. I'm not too deep in the research. I do my work is in memory training and coaching, but I teach full-time computer science, but it's how to code and algorithms and stuff like that. So I don't publish anything. I haven't done research. I mean, I did research for my master's, but that was years ago. But I understand it and can read on it, I understand pretty esoteric stuff. But yeah, that's your question.
Well, part of what interests me there, and especially the idea of being able to explain things according to physics and so forth, it feels very much to me that we're in this kind of transition phase. And when John came with this experience that he's been having, and then you mentioned that you saw that and, talk about these topics, coincidence or synchronicity or what have you. Mm-hmm. I read, I think it's called Twilight of Pluto by John Michael Greer. And I don't know astrology for anything, but nonetheless, part of the argument in his book is that when Pluto was declassified as a planet, it stopped
Yeah.
having astrological effects on us. and so like maybe Maki or some, is it, that was called Maki, like one of these other ones,
I don't know.
like this newly discovered heavenly bodies, maybe they will start to have an influence on us. And as much as I just want to throw that in the trash can, like, give me a break, that, the idea of a category like being removed from a planet now has astrological effects from all this.
Yeah, right.
Part of his other observation, which may or may not be true, because you could read this both ways, is that we have a science crisis right now. And there is, in England, there are graduate programs in witchcraft that have just recently been announced, and so he's talking about, not just in that book, but some of his most recent blog posts and articles and stuff like this, that there is this shift back to magic in the sense of the Renaissance, where some of the great memory masters were involved in this idea that you call down the light from heaven and you transcend up on the ladder of memory and you use memory techniques. And I just think, yeah, but we could also equally say that it's never been more scientifically sound than ever before, and the robots are grounding out superstitious stuff. So I don't know, would you, like, do you have a feeling one way or the other that it's the most exciting moment for science, or science is in trouble?
Yeah, it goes back to me being scared of this, because I grew up on scientific method and proper sound scientific experiments and things like that, and analysis. But it does feel like nowadays there is kind of a crossing over of science and spirituality, magic, whatever you want to call it. And I kind of am behind it. I feel like there's something to it, because as I was talking about just a moment ago, I thought studying physics would give me all the answers in the world, right? And I remember believing that as I studied it. It's like, this is it. This is everything. But it's so naive, because there's no way that our laws of physics describe and can't answer everything right now. Will it get better? Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're striving for. But there's no way you can say that it is a comprehensive explanation of everything. So if that's the case, then there are tons of things that we can explain. And whether you want to call it spiritual things, the things you can't explain, or magic, or maybe it's just physics that we don't know yet, right? I think that's just semantics, really, at that point. So I don't know. And in a way, physics is fucking magic, right? The physics that we do know, like something falls to the ground and different masses interacting, like the base of it is like, we have rules for it, but where does it come from? Like it's just oof, like there it is. Anyways, so yeah, I it's a bit scary for me, given my almost 40 years of being one way, and now I'm changing to another. I've never really believed in, had faith in anything bigger than myself. So it's a weird feeling to be open to. But again, a lot of, and maybe this is all, like you said, synchronicity, like I'm having more experiences that I can't explain, but maybe I'm more open to them, right? Or more in line with thinking that way. So I kind of have to be open to that as well. But yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like I'm still very skeptical of everything. I always try to take a step back and think first before I blindly believe it's something else.
Do you think age has any role to play in openness or experiences that can't be explained in any way?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think so too.
Not that I think you look old or anything, but we've known each other for a while.
Next month, but thanks. But yeah, no, I definitely think so. I feel like I've been around a little longer, and when I was younger, I wanted to always be right, and I thought I knew better. Now I don't feel that way. I'm more playful in my thoughts and open. Um, and who knows, maybe that'll change back to how I was earlier in my life later on. But for now, it seems, whether I had that experience back in 2021, maybe even without that, I would have found myself here in some other way, definitely is a softening of my belief system. Um, Maybe it's because I have kids too, and you see the magic in raising a kid and like how they fucking learn and absorb. And it's just like wild sometimes when you step back and look at what is happening with these little humans. So, um, yeah, and you contemplate death, right? More. And I stand for these kids and take care of them. And I'm out climbing and flirting with death. Like you think about more things like that as a 20-some-year-old. Like when I would go climb, I didn't think about death really. Like it was there, but I was like, man, I'm doing something exhilarating. It's me in this world and nothing else matters, right? But now it's different, right? So definitely, I think age plays a part in that.
So along those lines, I've heard that maybe you may compete again in the USA Memory Championship or elsewise. I'm not sure if that is going to happen or if I even remember that correctly. But when we go back to our theme that we started with, people gaming systems, people misrepresenting things for whatever reason they do it, and then we talk about age. You see more than I do in the competition world, but what I don't see, or let me tell you what I do see. I see younger people getting more and more involved. That's my impression, and doing really, really well. But I don't seem to see older people somehow getting better and better and giving the younger people a run for their money. If anything, the last I ever saw of Dominic O'Brien, for example, was I think on CNN Business or whatever, and he was talking about having problems where they have to look in people's ears now to make sure that they don't have some sort of communication device. And, who knows, maybe they got some sort of thing in their shoe where someone across the room is tapping.
Yeah, or like the chess player got something up his,
yeah. So
pulsating or whatever.
Are there people who are just getting better and better at memory techniques as they age, or is it still a handicap? Or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question because at my peak, X was the record and the level that people were at, and you had a vision of if you train hard enough, like just get better than this. But there was also like this impossible realm. But now those impossible realms is like where newcomers get to.
Yeah.
And let's like, for example, memorizing cards. Back when I was in the thick of it, really good time was sub 20 seconds, or I'd say maybe floating around the 20-second mark, right? And even just a few years before that, it might have been 25 seconds or sub 30 seconds. Nowadays, I mean, people do 15 seconds around there, and that's possible. And I think the world record still is 12.74 seconds, but that's basically 10 seconds. Okay. So now we're doing deck of cards in 10 seconds. Like, who's going to do a sub 10-second card? Somebody will, right?
Yeah.
But that sounds wild.
Does the hand move fast enough for it though? Or will it have to be digital?
I mean, maybe it's digital, right? Or maybe at some point somebody's gonna be able to just do that, right? Here's the other thing. I feel like with younger kids, they have the time, right? And they don't have a job, they don't have kids, whatever. That's a bit of an excuse, but it is true, right? Like right now, I'm managing a million businesses and I want to maybe go back and compete, but I'm like, where in the hell am I going to have the time, to truly devote to this, right? Even if it was like I dropped everything, okay? Even if I took a financial hit, right? I still don't know if I'd have the time to do it the way that I did it back in the past. So I feel like, and again, it's I'm not trying to make an excuse because I feel like I always say anybody can do this. I feel like anybody can get good if they train properly, and put the time in. But then I think there also is an age factor. There has to be, that I maybe can't think as quickly as maybe my 25-year-old self, right? But it's different, right? Because maybe I have different connections in my brain, I'm sure. And again, I'm more mature. I look at things differently, maybe more emotionally. Maybe that's better for memorizing things. Who knows? But there's got to be some deterioration, I think. And so maybe that plays a part in the ability for an older competitor to get to the levels that these newcomers are.
Yeah, I think
that's just my thoughts. I don't know.
It's more of a question on my mind than ever before, because last winter here in Australia, which was your summer, I had the virus so bad that I wound up in the hospital. And
no way. Oh.
Since that time, I've noticed a real difference. Let's say I don't want to give it more metaphorical value that may influence me than necessary. But I have had weird issues I never had before. Like, for example, memdeck work. Is suddenly a bit of a challenge for me. Like, that never was there before. Then doing the calculation. So I still do little memdeck tricks, but I now do different memdeck tricks that really don't require calculation on the fly, and they don't rely so much on knowing within seconds, or milliseconds, what number the card is in the deck. But that's not without sadness. And I actually don't really know what to do to work it, because it seems like it's not memory. It's not mnemonics.
Yeah.
It's like cellular change, like whatever, right? Hospitalization and whatever the oncoming things are. I don't know. Maybe you have an idea of what you might do if you can imagine what that scenario is like.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I was going to say is, if I felt something like that as I aged, and the answer is yeah. I mean, I'm not as good as I was, but I'm also not training like I was. It'll be interesting if I decide to compete again, and I try, right, to get back to where I was. If I can't, it'll be interesting to think, for me, what I think about that, right? Like, if it's, maybe I didn't have the same intensity, the same motivation, but maybe I'm just older, right? And I can't do it that way anymore. Do I feel anything in terms of fogginess more so than other years? I don't know yet. I don't think so. Again, I'm in the thick of it with my kids. I don't get to sleep as much as I can, so I definitely have some brain fog, but I'm exhausted, In terms of what you can do, in terms of suggestions, I mean, we are both memory coaches, and you don't know.
Oh, I'm not so proud that I wouldn't ask a colleague, because you never know what you don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know. And you meditate. I was going to say, some kind of mind altering experience, maybe. I don't know if you do psychedelics.
For a long time.
Yeah. Not that would be the answer. But
I feel like every day is pretty psychedelic enough.
Yeah. But I'm curious, do you train every day? Do you do a bit of memory practice every day?
I'd say almost every day. And, the odd time, 2 or 3 days will go past. But actually, I think if you allow for some triangulation, I study music, so maybe that's not direct mnemonic training, but
sure, but it's some kind.
I'd say I'm stimulating my memory every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
the other thing is, sorry.
Now that you say like the training effect sort of thing, probably if push came to shove and I was to do like formal magic again, and I was practicing every day, then I wouldn't recover totally, but I think I would get. So part of that effect may be that I don't really have any reason to get good at it again. Yeah. So that may be dragging it down a little bit. But
the other thing that could potentially, for people like you and me who have been doing this for years, is like some kind of complacency in our training, and it just lacks a bit of novelty and spice. And again, that kind of plays with motivation too, so maybe having someone on the outside direct your coach you, right?
Yeah.
And kind of give you a different methodology of how to practice, because I feel like I can do my own training. I've been doing the same way, but at the same time, like I'm not getting better. So maybe it would be time for me to be like, hey, Alex Mullen, write me up a training plan. Like, how do you do it? And tell me how to do it your way. It's going to be weird for me because I don't do it that way. But who knows? Maybe that would open up. It might be difficult at first, and I'd struggle, but it might potentially like break through a barrier that I'm a plateau, right?
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I have thought, like, when am I going to get myself to learn the shadow?
Yeah, me too. Oh my God.
That would be one of those things that, kind of like pushes you into a new realm if you haven't done it already.
Listen, I mean, maybe what it might take is like we need a what do you call it? Someone to hold us accountable. So maybe you're an accountability buddy, right? Maybe we do this together, right? And this is our 2024 goal. Like, I would love to do a video about this 2-card system, but I feel like I want to know it deeply rather than, talk about what Alex told me and what Lance told me, So I've tried and stopped to learn this system too. So we can talk about it off the side, but maybe that would be a fun little project to kind of keep us. It would to do it.
Anyway, we can jam on what might be involved in that. But for now, by way of wrapping this up, what, in addition to your channel continuing to do amazing things, I saw you just did something on poetry. What's coming up? And where, if people can't use Google, how do people find you? Do people use Google anymore? I don't know.
I don't know. Who knows?
We probably shouldn't say that. They're listening.
I do. Yeah. The other day, my wife and I were joking. We're like, we're trying to find a bed situation for we have a new kid coming, and other ones are getting older, and it's like, wow, we don't know like what the solution is, and so we're just like, let's say it out loud because Google is listening, and maybe it'll start to show us ads for the thing that we didn't know we needed, right? That hasn't appeared yet, but I'm sure.
See, we built the God that helps us imagine that we can have psychic powers because we kind of do,
right?
At a species-wide level.
Exactly. If I manifest it, Google will provide, right? But no. So I have a bunch of cool ideas for videos this year. Some that I've already started that are just longer projects. So a lot of this I'd really like. I've been working or sitting on this paranormal experience stuff that I really would have liked to roll out slowly on my channel. It's a bit scary for me because, I have these videos on debunking stuff kind of about this. And like, I don't want people doing that to me. So I've been doing it in a tasteful way that's just very open. I'm explaining exactly what this is, and I'm not saying what it is. You know what I mean? Just sharing my experience. I've also been dabbling in GeoGuessr a lot. I did a project with the top GeoGuessr guy last year, and we have some videos coming out, so that's fun. There's a lot of memory there. Just trying to come up with things that are of interest to me, some experimenting with things that are fun and maybe go viral. I had a couple cool short videos last year surprisingly do well, and maybe do more of those. I don't know if you saw me like doing memory demonstrations with some type of music and stuff like that. So I'm always trying to experiment with new stuff on my channel, while also providing helpful, content. That's the base of it.
Experimentation is the key. And if you ever do hit it big in the markets, I'll be the first one to twist your arm to revive the James Randi Prize. I don't know if you know what that was, but it was like $1 million prize for anyone who can demonstrate psychic ability. Because I think that it's a very sad thing that he sunset it and then no one else picked it up. And I'm not sure why exactly that happened, but I'd love to see something like that again.
Oh, I didn't know it was, he's dead, right? He bounced away.
Yeah, and I would have thought Banachek or someone would have, kept it alive.
Taking it over.
Anyway, I'm not really in the position to revive it myself, although it doesn't have to be $1 million either, I guess. But I'm certainly interested in the true spirit of inquiry, which is you say you can do this, then let's do it in front of a council of 7 qualified individuals. Maybe it doesn't have to be 7 scientists. It could be 7 people who, for whatever reason, have qualifications across the board. And, if it works in that location, should be able to work right here. And if you can do it, it's all yours. I think that's a healthy thing to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to say some buts, but
Well, give them to
it's
me. I love the butts.
no, but like, what if it can't be done in every place, right? And what if that's what it is, right? That's unfortunate, and again, I don't like that answer. Um, but there are some explanations that when this is being put under a microscope, it doesn't work as well. And I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying, like, what if that is what it is? It's maybe some kind of observational effect actually plays in, or some intention, positive, negative, maybe does affect it, right? And that if this is true, right? If this stuff is kind of taking in information, playing with intention, whatever, it shouldn't be too crazy that other people's intention can interfere. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
My instinct is to say, what was it? Schrodinger's cat is just like,
yeah,
just how many Schrodinger's cats are really dead right now in boxes. Like, can you show me one? That's
yeah. But yeah, and but then yeah, for any explanation I can give here, I also see what you're saying logically.
yeah,
It's like, out of all the people who can claim they're psychic, and for all the things that are talked about, are remote viewing, blah blah blah, like, somebody should be able to show something that's super convincing somewhere, right?
yeah.
That's yeah, I don't know. So
Well, I actually admire the project. I admire the spirit of inquiry, and I admire your openness to let the what if be there.
mm,
I think that is part of the magic that is lost in super dogmatic, serious efforts in science, which ultimately becomes scientism. And I've had people roll their eyes at me when I've said, we are seeing some serious scientism going on right now. And I just say, I call them out on it. You're going to roll my eyes on, you're going to roll your eyes at me about that word right now,
yeah, right.
with the things that are going on. I mean, scientism has always been a problem. There used to be qualified doctors telling you that you shouldn't wash your hands before you go into surgery. So
Oh yeah,
that I don't think those problems go away. So I would be on your side of keeping inquiry open, letting a little magic.
yeah,
And I'm not even sure how we could face the day without possibility in our minds.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing that I think was a big part of why I stuck around in this weird world, because one of the experiences I had when I was really kind of shifting gears on how I felt about remote viewing is how similar it felt when I had a good vibe on the session. It just felt fluid. How similar it was to when I have that kind of experience memorizing, you know? Um, and not so much, well, with memorizing, you have the memorizing portion and then the recall. I feel like those can sometimes feel different, you know? You know, when you're recalling, right, there's the satisfaction of getting something out of you and knowing you know it, not sure if you know it, and being completely stumped. Fuck, I don't know it. And then there's a portion of after checking it and being like, oh yes, I got it, right? During memorization, you can have a feeling that this is going well, but you don't know if you know it until you're going to the recall, right? Um, so some similarity there when you're doing a reviewing, you don't know if this is right. It feels like you don't know, but then sometimes it's just like stuff is coming, it's just flowing, and it feels good. You're on this kind of like vibe or line that is feeding information, and it's just coming, and it's rich. And then when you start kind of seeing visuals, like the visuals too were very similar to how you access information in a memory palace, or the visuals that you come up with or create to memorize something. And so I thought that was fascinating, that when you're memorizing and recalling information that you memorized, you're reaching into the past, right? With remote viewing, sometimes you can do it into the past. Sometimes you're also doing it in the future. But the reaching for information, even though you don't know it, because with memorizing, you see it, you see it. But with remote viewing, you don't see it. But information comes nevertheless. Just you don't know what it is, or you're not deciding what it is. But still, that information coming in, receiving, feels very similar, which to me was very interesting because then it leads me to the question like, well, are they the same thing? Right? Is it coming from the same place? Like when we remember things, are we actually accessing things that we encoded in our brain, or is it stuff that's out there that we're just a receiver getting it, right? And it's the same thing with remote viewing. We're getting this information too. I don't know, but all I wanted to say was that one of the exciting things about doing the remote viewing as a memory athlete was how similar the imagery was that was coming to me when I had a good session, and how similar it was to the images that come to me after memorization. And that's cool.
Yeah, well, I think that's actually profound, and it raises only my recommendation that people would do well to get even just an elementary understanding of physics, because there are these ideas in physics like block time theory, Gödel, talking with Einstein about how the past and the future are always already here. Maybe we're moving in time backwards. You know, those things really throw the concept of memory for a loop and a twist. And it's not like physics is some boring, like it must be an equation world. There's a lot of imagination in physics. And I think it's Pal Yorgrau, A World Without Time. It's just about the conversations that Gödel had with Einstein. And it is so incredible for taking you on this wild mental adventure about like what time might actually be. And they're still talking about it with, with the torus and like all this kind of crazy stuff that's going on in physics right now.
I don't know if I've ever read that. Is that published in a book somewhere? Those conversations?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you say Pal Yorgrau or Palais Yorgrau. I'm pretty sure that's the title, or that's the author's name, and I'm pretty sure the title is A World Without Time. It's very short, and it's just about their conversations about time. There's some other details in there, but like they walked every day apparently for many years.
Oh, cool.
And they just had these conversations. And like you probably know Gödel better than I do with incompleteness theorem, or more than one theorem, I think. But that applied to memory. I thought a lot about that kind of stuff. And, like problems in entropy. Not everybody agrees that entropy is actually the falling apart of things. Like if infinity is real, wouldn't entropy actually be more structure that's just constantly adding more structure to structure? Like to me, that's like mind-blowing kind of stuff, right? It might be wrong, but it's just like, never thought of that before.
Entropy plays a large part in remote viewing. In theory, it's theorized. That if anybody's interested in terms of physics and remote viewing or the psychic ability, look up a guy named Ed May. He's a physicist who pushes and has worked in some of these projects in the past, the CIA projects, military projects, has a lot to say about the science behind it, if you believe it's science. But he believes that entropy has a big part to play in how this is working, which is interesting. It's a whole conversation, but
yeah,
look it up. You'll find some interesting podcasts with him.
Cool. Well, thanks again for another conversation, and I think we can. Well, I hope to pick this up again and see where things go.
Sure.
Whenever the time presents itself, whether it's going forward, backward, diagonal, or invertum. or
We've already had that conversation. It's just waiting to.
I just don't remember it yet. Now we're sounding now we're sounding like a Philip K. Dick novel. Which, by the way, I was very surprised that I couldn't get an AI to create an image for me of Philip K. Dick holding the little black box in his story, the little black box, and it was like, this word is banned, and I'm like, his name is Philip K. Dick. And then I was just like, okay, the author of Minority Report holding a little black box.
That's funny.
So anyway, adventures in AI. Yeah, now you're seeing Philip K. Dick.
Yeah. The K is that word.
I should have said Philip K. Dingle. Maybe then it would have.
Yeah.
You ever heard that song? Don't let your dingle dangle dingle in the dirt. Don't let your dingle dangle, it might hurt. Anyway.
I don't know that, but that sounds like good.
Now you know, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the how to work with AI is maybe another thing at another time for picking into your computer science knowledge and the use of these tools for mnemonics, because a lot of people are doing that now.
Yeah.
So maybe we can
talk
about
that's
that.
That's another, let's say that when I have my next book, which I'm working on, more creative, hopefully it's going to be having a publishing date at some point, then we can have another conversation about that, which I think will play into everything that we talked about a little bit too. So
Perfect. I look forward to that very much.
thank you so much for having me, Anthony. It's always a pleasure to see you and to see your beautiful hair, to to hear your quotes that you throw out. Like, I don't know how you have them all memorized. You just pull them out of a hat. It's amazing.
Well, I think you do know how I have them memorized.
I mean, I do know. Yeah. I admire it.
It's nihil minus est omnis occupati quam vere, which, or vivere, I think you probably better pronounce it. But anyway, that's Seneca. And he said, we should not busy ourselves with the busyness of life. So I busy myself with the busyness of memorizing stuff as much as I can. So that's how I pull it out of my head. And I think you know.
Right.
And by the way, your recent poetry video is a great explanation of just how that is done.
Yeah. And that was a powerful thing for me. Is like, I should spend more time memorizing, written works and things that have stood the test of time. Because it feels good to know that stuff. So I can understand why you've got a lot of that committed to memory.
Yeah. And that's what it's about. That feeling that you talked about, where maybe there's an equivalence between some of these concentration activities and the concentration activity of using mnemonics. So
yeah,
always appreciate your thoughts and can't wait for the next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Until next time.
Thank you. Thanks again to Nelson, especially for participating in my little experiment in projection and possible remote viewing. I think these things are very, very interesting. I don't like to force my ideas on them, even though I am that kind of person who tends to push on these buttons as if that, there is a clearer answer sometimes than maybe there is. I don't know. I mean, this is the spice of life, shall we say. So I want to thank you for tuning in and being part of this conversation. I would encourage you to explore these matters further in a spirit of open inquiry, but not so open that, your brain falls out because your mind has just been completely bereft of borders. And do it with radical honesty. Truth and freedom are tricky things, but the more you know about both truth and freedom, the more you can know, and the more you can be a spreader of the good news that inquiry never ends. The questions keep on coming. This is a huge part of what the magnetic memory method is all about. And if you'd like to have more discussions like the one Nelson and I had today, you can support the project by letting us know in the comments, getting any of my books, the magnetic memory method, masterclass, etc. And, if you've already got these things, dive back into them and really put in the chops. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about radical honesty, truth, and freedom, a lot of it relies on the integrity of your practice, on having your memory be as fit and as expansive as possible. And that way, you can think critically in expansive ways and not necessarily talk yourself out of what might be just around the corner if you keep on practicing. Thank you again, and until we speak again, keep yourself magnetic.